Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and today I have a bright and fun Christmassy tag to share with you using a couple different reverse confetti sets. I'm using the candy canes from Joys of the Season and the stitched hex tag to create the base for my tag. I've already die cut that. I went ahead and die cut it off screen there from iced Aqua cardstock. And then I have some Premier Polar White cardstock that I'm going to use to stamp my candy canes on that I'm going to go ahead and color in and die cut out, and then they'll mount onto that tag to be decorated. I'm stamping it in Midnight Dye ink. I'm using my Misty. You don't have to use a Misty. It's just easier for me. And I skipped ahead a little there. I went ahead and die cut that out because I wanted to zoom in here and take a little time to show you how I colored this image in. It's a really simple Copic coloring technique, but it's kind of just fun to see it sometimes and actually see how it comes out. So instead of doing the traditional whites and reds, I went with two different shades of pink for my candy cane. I just thought that was kind of fun. And what I'm doing on each of these stripes is I've started with a lighter color pink and I'm flicking in from each side. So I'm leaving a little bit of white space in the middle. It's really hard. It's a little nerve-wracking when you first try and do it, but if you leave a little bit of white space in there, you'll find that it leaves a little more of the effect of light hitting it. I forgot to leave my cap there on that first one, but the first color I used there was RV10, and then I'm coming in just adding a little line of shading around the very outer edges with RV02. It's just a slightly darker shade of the pink. So once I've got all of that in, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my next color combo. For this, I'm starting for the darker stripes. I'm starting with RV13, doing the exact same thing but the alternating stripes, and I'm just flicking in from each side, and I found it was easier to go all the way around and then switch back to the other side. This one you can see a little bit better, that little bit of white space that I'm leaving in the middle there. Not a lot, not a super big amount, but that little tiny bit is really going to add to the realism of the coloring. So it's kind of something that is just a little tip that helps a lot when you want to color in. And these candy canes would be so fun to color in lots of different color combinations as well. All right, I've just about finished that. I'm going to do the same thing as I did on the lighter stripes, just one little line of the darker color, that's RV14, and just the outer shadow. Because candy canes are rounded, that little bit helps kind of make it look more three-dimensional as well. It's a small little touch, but I kind of like the little bit that adds. All right, now we have the pinks all done, so I'm going to move on to some soft greens to go for the greenery, and then we'll color the berries as well. For the leaves, I started off with G12. It's a nice soft kind of minty green. And I started off, as you can kind of see there, same thing. I left a little bit of spaces that are white. So it's carrying on that idea of a little bit of reflection, a little bit of light. So you get that kind of more three-dimensional effect. And then I'm coming in and shading with the next darker color, which is G14 on this. I kept my colors really soft and kind of dreamy on this with that iced aqua background. All right, final little bit of coloring here is those berries. I started off with that RV14. It was my shading on the darker stripes, and then a little bit of deeper color added with RV17. Simple as that there. We've got all our coloring done. Now I'm going to add the little tag from that stitched hex tag. I don't always add that, but I kind of thought it would be a fun touch on this. And to get it perfectly coordinated with my candy canes, I'm cut it out of white cardstock, and then I'm coloring it with another Copic marker again. That's the RV10 that I used for the lightest part of the candy canes. I colored both sides just because I didn't want any white to show. I didn't want it to look like white cardstock that I'd colored. I wanted it to actually look like that was the color of it. And then I only added a tiny bit of liquid adhesive right around that circle just to hold it in place. All right, now for the sentiment for this. Oh wait, before the sentiment, I forgot. I added some white paint splatters just to add an extra little bit of texture and effect. This is just white acrylic paint that I've thinned down with a bit of water. I keep it in a little mister bottle. If you don't have something like that on hand, you can just mix a little bit of white paint and water on a palette and splatter it on with a small paintbrush. All right, my sentiment, now we'll move on to that. That's using the Sweet Holiday stamp set. It's one of the smaller stamp sets from a couple years ago actually now, but it's kind of a great classic stamp set. I'm going to do the same thing to get my sentiment strip coordinated. I'm using two colors for this to kind of blend an ombre effect. I used the RV10 and RV02. It's the two colors I used for my lighter stripes. And the ink made that paper really wet, so before I stamped, I hit it with my heat gun. You can give it a little time just to sit and dry, but I wanted to be able to finish the video so I could stamp my sentiment on there using Midnight Dye ink, just like I did for the candy canes. Now I'm grabbing my paper trimmer, trimming it down a little, and I really wasn't even sure where I was going to put it on there. And as I started to look, I realized it would be easier to have the individual words. So I trimmed those apart with scissors. I mounted the candy canes with foam adhesive. I'm still not entirely sure where I'm putting everything. I just kind of started playing with it and finally just went, you know what? I just need to start sticking them down. We'll just see where they end up. So I started adding foam adhesive to the back of each piece, just a little tiny thin strip. Doesn't take very much. And then I could kind of tuck it around the candy canes a little. I just kind of wiggled it in there until I was happy with it. And you notice I didn't press all the way down on the foam until I was kind of happy with where I had it. So I did enough just to kind of hold it in place until I picked where I wanted to put it. All right, we needed a little more sparkle, so I pulled out some pink jewels to tuck around there. And I'm just kind of planning the placement for all of those. I generally plan where I'm going to place them before I adhere them down. And then I can pick them up one at a time, add some liquid adhesive behind them, and stick them in place. So once I get enough on there, I'm using my jewel picker to add them in place. I like to use glossy accents or some liquid adhesive. I have a fine tip applicator on there to make it easier. All right, and yet more sparkle. These bright colors are just so happy. It just begs for lots of sparkle. So I pulled out some Nuvo clear glitter drops, the colors Blizzard. I added those to the berries and also to the darker stripes on the candy cane. So that finishes it off. Bright and sparkly. It's one of my favorite Christmas color combos. A little non-traditional, but super fun and a super fun way to dress up a package. Thanks so much for coming by today. I hope you enjoyed. Have a wonderful day.